Scaling human behavioral science into a professional consulting environment presents a severe logistical challenge. When we attempt to apply a standard model of interpersonal empathy to a massive institution, it fractures. As we see here, the individual sentiment node breaks apart completely when subjected to structural pressure. Organizational development practitioners require a rigid, structural methodology. Relying on isolated emotional sentiment leaves critical systems vulnerable. Resolving systemic blockages demands an architectural approach to human behavior, mapping inputs and outputs with precision. The professional challenge is bridging the gap between individual emotional intelligence and macro-level systemic risk. Doing so requires replacing subjective sentiment with a formalized, tiered framework. The NEM CBS Institutional Certification Framework serves as a premier professional development path. Its primary objective is to evolve a practitioner's mastery of emotional intelligence and behavioral science into an applied, scalable discipline. This animated blueprint illustrates the framework's methodology. We reject subjective intuition, replacing it with a structured, three-tiered, inverted pyramid. Starting at this narrow base, the journey isolates the individual practitioner. As we move upward, the framework sequentially scales those individual skills, terminating in national policy advisory. This architectural progression provides the logic for scaling behavioral interventions up to the institutional level. Building an institutional behavioral framework begins with the baseline capabilities of the individual practitioner. This base tier represents Level 1. As the timer indicates, this requires a targeted, one-day intensive investment to establish a functional baseline. The focus here is emotional literacy, proving individual capability before interacting with a system. Alongside that literacy, we introduce an internal support structure, ethical interpretation. Establishing strict ethical parameters is a hard prerequisite. A practitioner must know the boundaries of their analysis before they are permitted to assess group dynamics. Without this Level 1 bedrock of ethical interpretation, higher-level behavioral diagnoses lack structural integrity and will eventually collapse. Once the individual baseline is secure, the methodology shifts from passive observation to active intervention within a collective system. This wider block is Level 2, dedicated to applied organizational mechanics over a 3-day program. Internal nodes appear, representing individuals. Practitioners diagnose complex patterns across the group. When severe bottlenecks are identified in red, isolating organizational blockages, the practitioner designs interventions, creating green pathways to bypass the stagnation. These interventions act as engineered solutions to clear systemic gridlock within corporate or operational environments. Level 2 translates the emotional literacy of the individual into actionable organizational repair. Organizational repair clears local gridlock, but massive institutions dictate entirely distinct macro-level requirements. This massive outer dome encompasses the system. This is Level 3, the framework's apex, requiring a full week of study. Securing this grants institutional proficiency. Complex data streams move from base organizations to the macro level, allowing practitioners to advise on systemic risk, directly informing national policy and global strategy. Operating at a national policy level requires extreme precision. Standard consultation tactics and observational guesswork are mathematical liabilities here. To handle this precision, those flowing data streams resolve into exact measurement scales. Practitioners at this level must deploy sophisticated psychometric tools. Level 3 elevates the practitioner from a specialized organizational consultant to a macro-level architect of human behavior. A framework scaling from a one-day individual intensive up to a week-long national policy program requires a single binding operational rule. Looking at the completed model, the underlying methodology becomes visible as the soft aesthetic is overwritten by hard alphanumeric data. These data points pulse in rhythm, representing our mandate, prioritizing scientific data over simple sentiment. The boundary box enclosing the data enforces our earlier rule. Ethical restraint must bound all data collection. Historical sentiment-based consulting fractures under pressure because it relies on subjective feeling. This framework relies strictly on quantifiable data. Maintaining this level of architectural precision requires practitioners to hold an ongoing subscription, granting access to elite research and updated psychometric tools. The structural integrity of the entire framework depends entirely on this continuous influx of rigorous, peer-reviewed research. This flowchart summarizes the NEM CBS framework journey. First, the one-day literacy step establishes the ethical foundation. Second, the 3-day diagnosis step leverages it to clear organizational blockages. Finally, the 1-week policy step scales insights to advise on systemic national risk. Integrating psychometric tools into this specific hierarchy transitions emotional intelligence from a realm of intuition into a discipline of measurable data. Completing the NEM CBS framework acts as a total structural recalibration of a practitioner's technical capabilities. To begin this premier professional development path, practitioners must secure access to Level 1 and establish their baseline. By anchoring behavioral science in complex data and ethical restraint, practitioners achieve maximum professional impact at the highest institutional levels.